welcome back. I've got Dan Mccall on the line. Dan, how are you?
Very good, Michael. Nice to be with you today.
Likewise, glad that you're here. You work for an organization, and correct me if I mispronounce this, Influitive. And this organization, especially during a pandemic, I anticipate it's been busier than normal. So tell us a little bit about the organization, yourself, and some of this awesome work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, Influitive is an 8-year-old company. We're actually headquartered in Toronto, which I know you're at right now. I'm in my office in Massachusetts. The company was founded around this notion of customer advocacy, and it's really developed that market, I would say, as a pioneer, not so much in the B2C space, but in the B2B space. So a lot of our customers are large SaaS software companies. And there's really a lot of difference between what it means to be a customer advocate, say for Mountain Dew, or what it might be to be an advocate for, let's say, Salesforce or Oracle or IBM or some of our other customers, Adobe. So in those cases, there's a lot more complexity around what are the kinds of things you want your customers to do. And so what Influitive built was what I'd largely describe it as a human engagement platform. We took techniques out of the gaming industry, point systems, badges, rewards, and built those on top of what amounts to be a community platform. And really the idea is being able to reward your customers for doing the things that you want them to do and you need them to do to be successful. And so some of those things that you want them to do are be advocates and write a post for you or give you a referral, act as a reference on your behalf. But overall, we've developed a lot of techniques on how to engage people. And so if you think about a physical event, we've been using our product for quite some time with some of our larger customers, where you can take a group of folks, you can bring them into this environment, and you can incentivize them ahead of, say, a physical event to give you feedback on what they want to hear while they're there, or sign up for sessions, learn more about speakers, and get rewarded ahead of the time, kind of build some energy and some buzz. Then, at the event, you can use the platform for, kind of one-off things. And then post-event, you can keep the conversation going. And so what we did in the COVID crisis, our customers very early on, I'm going to say in the March timeframe, they were already canceling events. And they were coming to us and saying, what can you do for us? We've talked about either using you physically or we use you physically. How do you help us with a virtual event? And so we launched something that we call our Virtual EventHub. And it's really taking a page out of what we're doing in the physical world, but then bringing it now to a live event. And so we've had to make changes in our product to bring video in and other things that weren't there before. But the concepts are very similar, which is engage people ahead, during, and after. And then hopefully, especially if they're customers as opposed to somebody who's net new working with us, they can tie that back into their overall customer marketing program, which, for the most part is built around this notion of customer advocacy.
No, it's a great thing that your customers came to you and said, okay, what can you do to help us? Because again, at that time, I remember March, it was an absolute just zoo for a lot of organizations, every sector, all over the world, trying to figure out, okay, we're basically getting the orders to shut everything down right now. And there's no plans of how in the world do we do this. And from an event planner standpoint, you're going, wait a minute, we're supposed to have an event in July, and we usually bring in about 1,500 people. And that's a revenue base for that organization of whatever it is. And for many organizations, and I used to work for an association many years ago, and the annual event, it paid the bills. Let's put it that way. It covered things. So you drop that grenade into your budget. Needless to say, the accountants are scratching their heads and pulling out their hair if they have any, and say, okay, now what do we do about this? So the fact that you had some really forward-thinking individuals saying, what can we do about this, and how you were able to pivot quickly to have this new system speaks volumes to.
What we did, Michael, was we did a couple of things. I mean, it's funny you reminded me of, like, this was March. It seems like a year ago, but it wasn't that long ago. But having them come and talk to us made us think about our own event. We have something called Influitive Live coming up in August, and we literally were scratching our heads going, well, we're still going to have that. It's still going to be a live event. We'll bring people in. And it very quickly became apparent that was going to be a virtual event as well. I don't even think I can fly up to Toronto for that event. I don't think the airlines will be flying on August 5th. So that was like a little bit of a shocker of how fast things progressed. What we said was for our customers, we sell a software package. We just basically said, look, anybody that wants to use this for an event, it's just free to you if you're a customer. And then we offered them consulting services where the goal was take your physical event and turn it into a virtual event in as little as 2 weeks. And that's where I think people were really appreciative. It's just they were scrambling. Now, as time's gone on, people have had more time to evaluate options and look at things. And so it's not as helter-skelter, I think, for a lot of folks. What we've seen is that the attendance is actually through the roof on these virtual events, but it's not necessarily as deep. So like when you go to a physical event, you're kind of immersed, right? Even if it's a day-long event or even a half day, you're there, you're doing as much as you can. In these virtual events, many of them are recorded or you can watch them later. So you get, I think, more people attending, but they're just attending kind of what they want to do. And I believe that it'll be interesting to see, customer marketing and marketing departments kind of pull this all together, which says, which is actually more effective. Forget about the revenue loss or anything else, which is more effective. What I do think will happen, though, is that we're always going to have virtual and physical events together. It's just too risky, right, to not do it. And beyond that, there's amazing results that are being produced, 5, 6x attendance at an event. Now, some of that, a lot of these people just dropped their fee, right? Where they might have had a fee and, that would have gone to the event and the facilities and all that. They just said, well, if it's virtual, it's relatively cheap for us. We'll open it up and make it free. And so obviously there's price sensitivity around going to events. Some of these things cost thousands of dollars. And so if you can attend for free, the bar just went way down. So overall, though, I think that the virtual event world is here to stay.
I completely agree with that. And when I talk to event planners, that have virtualized, I told them, look, don't walk away from the virtual side of things once things open up again and we're allowed to go out and play in large groups, because you have now created an additional business model for you.
Yep.
So if you have an event and it's at wherever in the world, in Boston, New York, wherever, there is a capacity of the number of people that you can have in that room.
That's right.
With the virtual side of things, depending on what you pay for, there's no real limit on it. So what happens is you create this opportunity where, yes, you're going to have the people that want to be there in person. And I love going to events. I love speaking at events. So I love the networking component of it. But there may be some scheduling conflicts for people where they would go and be able to make one of the days or 2 of the days, but not the entire week, for example.
That's right. There you go.
They can register for it virtually, attend the sessions they need to attend, and then step back out. They're still getting value, and hopefully they will have it where they will pay, obviously, a lesser fee because you're not paying for the extra seat or the stale bagels or anything else at the conference center. But, and I say that tongue in cheek because they're always stale. It's like,
they are. Yeah.
Last week's bagels, yeah, or last month's bagels. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, definitely not today. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it's actually created a new business model for a lot of these organizations. On top of once they figure out, okay, we can do this. We like this virtual stuff. They can start offering more sessions throughout the year instead of having that big one-time event. They can see, we can do this 3 or 4 times a year.
That's right.
Three of them be virtual only. Bring in a few people, get in, charge $199 or $399 or something like that instead of the normal $1,500.
Right.
And then do the $1,500 for the big event and maybe a little bit less if it's just virtual. All of a sudden, their revenue has increased. They're creating more content, and their membership is getting more value than they were before, and it gives them flexibility. So any event planner that's watching this, figure it out. And if you don't, well, shameless plug, you can get one in a couple of weeks, according to what my valued guest has said to me today. So
yes, you can absolutely.
That's a free ad. Won't charge you. But no, I'm a firm believer in this because events, people love going to events, and I think that's a big thing where a lot of people are missing out on them. And you've seen the evidence already that you mentioned a few minutes ago, where you're seeing the attendance numbers much higher than before because people are like wanting to consume some things, and they can do it in such a way where it's not a full day event. Because that's the one big challenge, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is being in an event all day. There you get up, you stretch, and move around. Being on a Zoom call all day is a completely different model. So it'd be interesting to see how your clients have kind of pivoted around that, and as far as structuring their content.
Well, yeah, and I think the thing that I've noticed, and so this is just kind of at a personal level, I've been able to attend a lot more events just because I don't have to be physically there. And for me to take 2 days out to go to some conference somewhere, I'd love to be able to do it. I don't have that time and that luxury. So, but now that many of those same things have gone virtual, I've been able to attend a lot of them. And I would say, a couple of things. One is, I think everybody is struggling right now with how do you capture the energy and the kind of, that human interaction that you get at a physical event. They all feel a little flat to me. And so I think that's one of, now, if you're there to consume information that's valuable to you, a lot of the events that our customers are talking about are their customer events or their partner events, things that are, it's not just a trade show of a million vendors, it's their customers, and how do they bring them in? Well, they have to educate them. They're doing things, they're making product announcements. All of that works really well. But what you're missing is that kind of energy and buzz. And so I think that's where this industry will mature, at some level over the next few years, which is how do you bring in the virtual folks in a way that's much more interactive than it is today. And this doesn't mean Zoom and video like this, because that works at 2, maybe to 20, 30 people, maybe even 100. But when you get to like 1,000 people, you can't have a visual of every person. Plus, they can't all talk at once. So it's always a one-way kind of conversation. So I think those are where the industry, I have our team thinking about it for our event that's coming up called Influitive Live in August. It's literally, how do we turn this thing into something that's as engaging as the kinds of things, like, is there fun in it? Is there any chance to have fun? And or is it just a talking head? So that's where I think the challenges are going to be. But I completely 100% agree with you. Like, if you're not doing virtual events going forward, you're missing an opportunity on a whole bunch of different dimensions.
Yeah, I know. I've seen Zoom happy hours and things like that. It's, and it's a little bit different, but, they still, they're trying. And I think the thing is, I think one of the things I've noticed with a lot of people, especially in the business side of things, not so much when you're at a grocery store where people are a little bit rude and short because they're upset about the pandemic and everything else.
Yeah.
But I find in this world where people are attending events and they're doing virtual things, is there's this deep understanding of, hey, we are all trying to figure this thing out right now. We are all brand new. This is the first day of kindergarten for everybody. We're all same level, and we laugh at it and go, well, that didn't work. And,
that didn't work.
My microphone, today is working great. Yesterday, I was on a TV interview in DC, and it was like nothing. So I had to grab my normal iPhone headphones and plug it into the laptop. It's like, okay, let's go old school here. And it worked. And it's like, I don't know what's going on with this thing. And
kick save and a beauty.
Exactly. Pretty much. Exactly. It's like, it just works out well. But at the end of the day, I think that everyone understands that this is still, quite frankly, pioneer days for some of this. And, we'll look back at this in a year or two and we'll go, wow, it was funny how when we started, we were doing this, but now we've had this setup and this setup. But I agree with you. Any organization that puts on an event, virtual has to be something that you offer, because we've gone from people not really wanting to consider it, or they're like, yeah, maybe I'll check in for a couple of minutes, to the point where I think many people are going to say, no, I want the virtual option.
Yeah.
Because they may not want to travel as much, or not comfortable with traveling as much, or who knows what the situation would be. For me, because I speak, I'm used to traveling. I saw my luggage yesterday and I was like, oh, buddy, I miss you. How are you? Not really. But yeah, I mean, literally, I look at it and I know this sounds funny, but it kind of looks sad. It was like, was disappointed. It was the weirdest thing, and I'm like, we'll see you again one day. But right now, you're going back
It
into.
just feels like a lot longer ago the last time you used it than it actually is. It's just like these months have really,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they go fast, but they drag, you know, like
yeah.
it feels like ages since we were a normal group of folks working out of an office or doing the kinds of things that we all learned either as marketers or whatever to do. And so, yeah, you're right. We're all in it together, and people are. You're right. It's a very good point you made. People are very accommodating to mistakes in this world because they know it's new. You're breaking new ground.
And I hope that that continues as we continue to break new ground, because I think there's still going to be a lot of new adventures and ways to do things and make events dynamic. I trust that there's going to be some event somewhere. I'm not sure who, but it'll probably be one of the more creative ones that will come up with something and it'll catch on, and people will say, okay, that's a
That's the
component
winner.
that we want to have for our events going forward, which that's great, and I think that's because we all have this playground that we can mess around with now, and the freedom to say, yeah, we're gonna probably screw some things up. All right, well, okay, click on this Zoom link instead. We're all fumbling around with it, but we're at least we're having fun and we're engaging with people and all that. So
Yeah.
if you're an event planner and you're really struggling to try to figure out, okay, how in the world can we actually do this without giving away the Colonel's secret recipe? What are some things that they can start thinking about preparing so they can actually have a successful virtualized event?
Yeah, I think. Well, I think probably anybody that's even doing something this year is already thinking about those things. And I think it starts with um, looking at what are the real differences between physical and virtual, and where are you going to have strengths and then where are you going to have weaknesses. And so and not trying. It's impossible to recreate a physical event virtually. Like, let's just start with that. So there's folks that have software that does kind of like a virtual conference center, and it's like, yeah, it's visually appealing, but in practical speaking, what is the interactivity there, and is there a buzz there? How do you bring people together, I think, is the real thing, as opposed to just this talking head going out and then maybe a chat box that's going. Now, there is some of that in a physical event. Like, you kind of wonder sometimes when you see the tweet storms at a conference where somebody's doing a keynote and it's just the Twitterverse is going crazy. And there is an element of that. But then what do you do with that information afterwards? How do you spit that back out? I do think that most people at physical events have always cataloged their videos and put them up. But then what's the structure around it? Are you gonna have this as a virtual event? If you put on a virtual event, there's no reason you can't just replay the whole virtual event. And so, some of the things people are doing, which is quite effective, is they're just not even trying to do something live, because it's prone to errors, as you described. But they're recording things ahead of time. But then they'll have the people that were the speakers live and available to answer questions and do things like that. You want to think about, are you going to allow people to use their video at all if they want to ask a question? In an audience, somebody goes over and hands you a microphone. Everybody knows who did it. Well, some of those people don't turn on their camera. So what's the value of that? Do you want it typed? Do you want it in voice? And I think all of those things, you kind of have to have a theory on how you're going to do it. Because you don't want to get there that day and then decide that you really wish you had some other voices in the room other than, say, like a talking head. Dry runs, really, really important, right? Go take your company, half your company, have them attend a dry run. So, and these are things that you don't really do, like you do them in microcosms around a big event or a physical event. You rehearse a session, but you don't rehearse the whole thing. So I think those are the kinds of things that event planners need to think about. And, again, I just go back to how can you make it the thing that the biggest critique, and it's not, we're nothing that we do is solving this problem, directly. How do you get more interactivity? And from a technology stack, I think the one thing that I do think will happen in the future here is there's so many pieces of software. Just take, we're on Zoom right now, but there's tons of video platforms, there's tons of chat platforms. How do they all integrate into your software? Because if anybody's expecting one vendor to come up with the answer, it's unrealistic. So for our part, what we do is a great job of engaging you ahead of the event, and we engage you after the event. We keep conversations going. We gamify the whole experience. That's a great base to think about an event. But then at the actual event, how do you kind of get a buzz going? What are the things that you're going to do to kind of spark the energy that you lose when you go virtual? And so that's the kind of thing I would encourage people to think about. And as marketeers, that's what they should be good at is being creative.
Those are great advice, tips, and I really hope that any event planner out there that is looking at, towards the tail end of 2020 or even 2021, and they're not certain about if their event's going to be live or virtual or a hybrid thereof, is get ahead of it and use some of the tips that we talked about today. So, Dan, I've loved our conversation. Where can people find out more about you and this awesome work that you're doing?
Yeah, it's so really simple. We're just influitive.com. Real easy to find, real easy to navigate. We talk a lot about, advocacy and advocacy marketing, but really this is a human engagement platform. And so one of our use cases is Virtual Event Hub, and easy to find, easy to sign up for a demo, and easy to talk to us.
That's awesome, and I'll definitely have that in the show notes. So, Dan, appreciate you and this awesome work you're doing. You're making events continue. And I think that's what's really crucial right now in this time of need and people kind of fumbling around is events are still happening because of people like you in the world that are creating this opportunity for events to shine. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me on. Very, very nice talking with you.